Welcome back to another Pomble Quest video. Today we'll be introducing another 3-stage starter line. And if you were confused by any of what I just said, be sure to head over to this video first. But for everyone else who's caught up, let's continue on. Today's Pomble is not only going to be a 3-stage starter line, but it's also the first poison type, which is pretty significant since this was a type I considered dropping. And I'll talk more about that. In a recent video, I talked about how I haven't made any poison type Pombles yet. I'm pretty go with the flow when it comes to the Pomble designs, and it just happens that no design I cranked out was of the poison variety. But I have pretty much every type covered so far besides poison, so it was about time I actively attempted a poison type design. With 3-stage designs, I designed the final stage first, because it's nice to know where the final destination ends up, and it's easier to work backwards from there. But for showcasing and build up, I like to present it in evolutionary order. So with that, let's get into the first stage of design. When thinking of themes of poison and toxicity, I immediately go to garbage, sewers, and rats. Pretty basic starting concepts, I know, but I'm not above it. Especially if I feel like I can bring something kinda new to the table with its evolutions. But yeah, pretty straightforward here. I go for this rat, possum-like creature that has a body that kinda resembles a little trash bag. I think it's fun and represents its poison typing well. As some of you have pointed out, I did hint towards this design in my video where I discussed reworking starters. I just thought it'd be fun to leave little Easter eggs, and it's not the first time I've done it. But yeah, with all that, let's introduce Crumbsum, the trash forager Pomble. Their appetite for toxic waste means they are often found in mucky habitats that most Pombles and people would avoid. Although they can eat normal foods just fine, they seem to prefer their meals rotten and spoiled. I really like Crumbsum. It's super straightforward, but I think that's perfect here since it's about to get a little funky actually. At this current junction, I wonder if anyone could predict where this line is headed. It's not going to be anything too insane, but it's just a little odd I think. Anyway, enough teasing, let's just get into the evolution. So as you can see, it's gonna get a little bit ugly. The idea with this evolution is that the Pomble is starting to lose its fur due to all the toxic waste it consumes. A little bit messed up, but don't worry, it doesn't really mind. It gets pretty hot down in the sewer anyway, so it didn't need that fur coat. As you can see, this mouse possum creature is starting to take a bit of a turn here. I don't want to say too much here since we'll be covering its evolution real soon. But yeah, I essentially just wanted to make a little nasty Pomble. I spent quite a while trying to sort out the fur pants situation. I knew I wanted them, but with the fur pattern and texture, I tried to do my best to keep it as visually simple as possible. The parts of the body without the fur were pretty plain though. So I did my best to break it up with a good old belly circle pattern and 2 spots that kind of resemble a banana that is over-ripened. It will also play into its evolution as well, so there's some setup here in regards to the pattern. Decided to adjust the eyes since I thought the eyelid was a bit much and wanted to simplify the design. The tone of the new expression I think works a lot better. Kinda went from sleepy to what are you looking at? So yeah, with all that, let's introduce Garbin, the garbage guzzler Pomble. Its diet of hazardous waste has altered its form. Its fur is nearly gone and its skin becomes a rougher, harder material. Due to all the toxin it consumes, it can release a poisonous breath at its enemies to keep them away. I think this is definitely one of my funkier Pombles. It's a pretty silly design with fur pants and ears that almost feel like Mickey Mouse. But I think it's so cute in an ugly way. But yeah, you can see some more of what I'm trying to set up here. The rodent layer of this design is being slowly peeled away to reveal something else underneath. Now let's see what that something is with its evolution. So when initially coming up with a poison type concept, I immediately gravitated towards the sewers. And 2 animals that come to mind when thinking about sewers are rats and alligators. Now I know alligators don't live in the sewers, but there's this whole sewer gator urban legend that makes the 2 things associated with one another for me. Regardless of the truth surrounding sewer gators, I think it's a really cool starting point. But I thought it'd be too basic to go for a straight up gator, especially when I already have tusk gator and chop panna. So I decided to mix in a bit of possum since they're also kind of associated with dirtiness and trash. Initially I tried to explore a different angle for the key art since it's a very long design, but I really feel like this angle showed off its best side and highlighted its silhouette, which I liked a lot. So yeah, it's essentially this gator possum hybrid that has lost all its fur and even its ears. The constant for this line's progression is that the starting Pomble has an inner demon of sorts that encourages it to eat hazardous and toxic materials. And the more it does that, the more it would become this demon. In this case, the demon is represented by the gator-like qualities. So with this final form, the demon inside is fully unleashed. Now with its new demon form, all the poison it contains within itself can now be manipulated and released through the holes all over its body. I especially enjoy where the previous ears were, there are now these gaseous horns. I know it's a little cheesy to keep doing the pointed tail for my demon type pombles, but I'll stop it when it stops looking so good. Now comes the part that always comes up in my designs, which is how to break up the dead space. I hate defaulting to leg patterns that kind of resemble fox leg patterns. It's kind of basic, but they always do the trick without being too much. So I'll leave them for now, but I can see myself changing it in the future since it does look a bit flat. Figuring out the colors were a ton of fun for this design, but I eventually settled on greens and yellows that give it this radioactive vibe to it. But with the colors done, that's pretty much it. Let's introduce Venix, the Toxic Fiend Pomble. These pombles are basically giant tubs full of poison. They use their demonic powers to manipulate the poison inside them. So it is perfectly safe to be around one if you are an ally, but quite dangerous if you are a foe. I love how this final pomble came out. I think it's another one of those designs that kind of look like it sits in between many kinds of different creatures. Still mostly resembles a gator, but I can totally live with that. I think the poisonous gas coming out of it is really fun and adds a much needed pizzazz for this pomble. What really makes me love this pomble though is the line as a whole. I think it's a slightly unconventional line, but it also makes a ton of sense once they're all together. I think the middle stage definitely does a lot of the heavy lifting there, bridging the gap between the first and final stage. Honestly, the middle stage is kind of becoming my favorite of the line, but I think all three are really fun. The first stage is cute and simple, does exactly what it needs to, and is kind of so straightforward that you might not expect it would turn into this demon, possum, gator thing. The final form caps off the line and finishes off the concept that I set up. But yeah, I'm really happy with this line. I'm really glad I was able to tackle the poison type, so for now it looks like the type will stay. Be sure to let me know what you think of this line. Is it trying to do too much? Would no one want a possum as their starter? Do the holes make you uncomfortable? These are just some of the things I could see people not enjoying, but curious to get a general opinion. But yeah, with that, another 3-stage pomble has been added to the starter pool, and I think it fits in quite nicely. Again, all these quote-unquote starters are all subject to change, and even now I'm constantly reconsidering how I want to handle starters, or even if I want to call them that. But since we all know what starters are, it's easier to use that lingo for now. Since my video talking about reworking starters, there's been a ton of suggestions and ideas. And since this video is a bit short so far, I thought it'd be nice to quickly go over some of those suggestions and concerns regarding my starter system for Pomble Quest. First, let's start with some concerns. One thing people seem to be worried about is that starters don't feel special since you can just catch them in the world. So by me trying to make them special, I've actually made them unspecial. And yeah, that's true. I guess I should have been more clear. It's not that I'm trying to make the pombles themselves more special, but I'm trying to give opportunities for your experience with your first pomble to be more special. So it's more that the pomble is special to you rather than any imposed specialness on my part as the creator. That's the short of it for now, but I'll talk more about this and the next few points in its own video about starters in the future. So don't worry if you don't understand what I'm saying right now. Another concern is that everyone will want the rare 3-stagers, so I should do something to make the others a more viable option. I may have forgotten to address it in the video, but I don't mind if this happens at all. It's actually kind of my intention in the first place. Also, there's been implications that common pombles are weaker since they don't evolve, but as I've mentioned before, this isn't Pokemon. My current plans are to make every pomble as viable as one another. There's not going to be some inherent disadvantage to a pomble that hasn't evolved or doesn't have an evolution at all. Now, a suggestion I got from a few of you were to have the uncommon pomble exist in multiple parks, but not all, which makes a ton of sense, since right now common pombles are in all parks while both the uncommon and the rare are only in their exclusive parks. So making the uncommon between the two makes a ton of sense. I originally thought of this idea too, but I was worried I would have to design more pombles. But as people kept bringing it up, I realized that's not true. If I just make each town include their uncommon pomble and the next town over's uncommon, then it'll be the same 5 uncommon pombles in total. Anyway, I only wanted to quickly address some of these concerns and ideas. There's a lot more I'd like to discuss about these topics and other starter topics, but that would warrant its own video. So if none of that stuff I mentioned made sense, don't read too much into it. I'll be sure to explain it better in the future. I just wanted to give out some crumbs for those hungry for starter system related info. But yeah, thanks again for the love on that video and all the feedback. I can't reply to all of you, but I do my best to read them all. I really do my best to take in your feedback where it's applicable. But yeah, this feels like a nice place to wrap up. I've introduced the 4th 3-stage starter pomble, which in my current starter system means there's only one more to go. So look forward to that. I actually haven't worked on it yet, so there's no teaser or Easter egg like the last 2 starters. So no need to go looking. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I will see ya next time.